Well, on a day where they're opening the wallet in Washington, we're talking about tightening the belt in Oklahoma. Good afternoon, I'm Dave Morris here in the Oklahoman's video studio for a look back at the stories that made headlines and a look ahead to the weekend at the headlines that will be in your newspaper and on your favorite website, newsok.com. Joining us for this discussion, we have Director of Live and Enterprise, Phil O'Connor, and Business Editor of the Oklahoman, Don Mecoy. Gentlemen, have we enjoyed enough Christmas candy in the newsroom this week? Yeah. Speaking of looking back.
Stop sending candy.
Yes, we've had plenty.
We've had plenty. The holiday parties are amidst for all the businesses around downtown, and we are enjoying some of the spoils in our newsroom as well. Speaking of spoils and perhaps some bad news, this week we learned the Oklahoma economy facing a budget deficit ahead of us of almost $1 billion. Don, give us a little bit of background on that, and then we can talk about moving forward, what does this mean? But the background is?
Well, a lot of the background is energy prices. A huge chunk of our revenue that the state takes in and spends comes via the energy industry through a production tax, oil, natural gas. They get a cut of that. And as prices have collapsed over the past year, that has become less and less. And it was clear, there was a clear trend that we were falling short of estimations, and then when we got to the point where they had to estimate what we're going to have for next year, it looks like there's about $1 billion hole in the budget.
And I believe I read that they say it may even get worse.
Yeah, well, certainly energy prices are as low as they've been since the depths of the Great Recession, so we've seen no recovery there, so the revenue coming in continues to decline every month, and the situation hasn't even stabilized, much less improved. It appears to be getting worse month by month.
And we saw the cost of oil, I believe, today and this week below $35.
Right.
First time we've seen that since 2009, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a while. Speaking of oil, oil export ban. Give us some background on that.
Well, when the budget deal in Washington was being hammered out, a lifting of the oil export ban, which has been in place since the great oil embargo of the 70s, was included in there. They were going to get rid of this export ban to allow U.S. producers to send oil overseas to markets. And it was passed by Congress, both houses of Congress. The White House has indicated that they're going to sign off on it because they like the budget bill overall, even though that's something in the past that Obama has said that he's not a fan of. But local oil and gas producers, oil producers have been long in favor of lifting that ban because they want to be able to sell their oil into any market, and into the global market rather than just in the United States.
As Don mentioned, President Obama addressing the nation this afternoon. Our Chris Castile in Washington is working on that angle. He'll have plenty of coverage of the spending bill. As he mentioned, both houses, both branches passed a $1.15 trillion spending package that avoids the government shutdown, funds federal agencies through next fall, among other things. Getting back to Oklahoma and the economy, for the everyday citizen, which is all of us, what is the impact that this might have, and what might we be seeing? When might we be seeing it next year?
Well, as far as oil prices, I don't know that it's going to have a big immediate impact. Right now, the spread between the price of that you get for your oil in Cushing, Oklahoma, which is where they set the price for West Texas Intermediate, and the price that you get in London for bent crude is not very wide. So you can load up your oil in a tanker and you can go over there after this bill gets passed and approved, and you can sell it into that market. But oil is, this is my favorite economic word, oil is a fungible economy. The market doesn't care where the oil comes from, whether it comes from Saudi Arabia or Venezuela or Grady County. The prices are not all that different right now. In the past, there had been huge splits that you could get quite a bit more for your oil overseas than you could in the United States. That has narrowed, and so I don't know, and when we didn't see an immediate effect on the oil prices, they continued downward even as this legislation was being passed by Congress. So long term, I think it's going to have a good effect for the oil industry in Oklahoma, and we've long had these leaders in the industry saying that they would like to be able to do that. I mean, frankly, you've been able to load up gasoline and ship it overseas forever, but you couldn't do it with oil, which didn't make a lot of sense. So they now have access to markets that they didn't have in the past. So long term, it could have a good effect on the price, but short term, we haven't seen that yet.
We had a debrief with Chris Castile, speaking of our man in Washington, earlier this week. And one of the stories we're working on in a few weeks or months from now is the comparison of what's going on in the Oklahoma economy right now with what we went through in the 80s. And this is kind of another turn of the crank of that story angle, right?
It is, and one of the things that we're seeing that we saw this week, the Fed boosted the benchmark interest rate, excuse me, 0.25%, very small, but the first time they've done that in many years. As the U.S. economy, they feel like the U.S. economy is rolling along pretty well, so this is a good time to start boosting interest rates little by little. The problem is, as this is happening in Oklahoma, a lot of it due to oil prices, our economy excuse me, appears to be slowing down. We saw in the second quarter that our GDP contracted, our economy contracted. We're seeing a little higher unemployment. We're seeing this big hole in our state budget.
Worst in the nation, weren't we, Don?
Yeah, we were worst in the nation in the second quarter for economic growth. We were one of the few states that actually contracted. So this is something that happened in the 80s too, where while the United States was going through a prosperous period, we were heading into a recession. Now, I've talked to one or two local economists who say, yes, these are recessionary times in Oklahoma, but a lot more people are saying, you know, things still aren't that bad here. Our unemployment is low. We're still seeing a lot of activity in real estate and construction. You know, manufacturing has slowed down a little bit, and obviously the energy is a problem, but they don't see it as being us being in a recession yet. But we're getting to the point where people are asking the question.
To me, it's like an interesting flip, because if I understand correctly, Oklahoma didn't suffer quite at the downturn when the nation economy tanked in 2008 and in those years after, because oil was so strong.
Exactly.
And that construction, especially in the Oklahoma City area, because of maps and other things, you know, there was never sort of the construction, you know, hit that a lot of other communities took.
And our housing market, we didn't soar like some of those crazy housing markets like you saw in Las Vegas and Phoenix just before the big recession, where you had this big housing bubble. We never experienced that in Oklahoma. So when the recession hit, you know, it was driven a lot by what was going on in the housing sector. We didn't have that here. So we didn't suffer as much. And then as we were coming out of the recession, you know, oil prices really soared, which boosted our economy. And we were, for a long time, you look at these economic reports in Oklahoma and Oklahoma City, were ranking tops in the nation in things like employment and other aspects. So it's changed, it's turned around with the prices.
Good context and analysis from the Oklahoman's business editor, Don McCoy. Before we turn to some fun stuff, and we have some Star Wars and some glitter beard to get into, stay on a bit of a serious tone here with upcoming coverage you have, Phil, off of your team with a project called The Intersection.
Right, yeah, it's a story that we've been working on for about a month or so, and what we wanted to do was go back and try and tell the story a little bit of what happened the day of the OSU homecoming. And it sort of emerged out of the idea that in the weeks after, the stories that we began to hear about people and the heroic things that a lot of people did, you know, on that day, coming to the aid of the injured, you know, doing whatever they could to assist. And so what we tried to do was pull together a story that looked at that day from a variety of people, from their viewpoints on what started off as just what was to be a really joyful day for them, you know, to go to a homecoming parade, and it just ended in tragedy. So
on a random Saturday morning, strangers from across the state could actually gather literally at one intersection.
Absolutely, and their lives intersect there as well, and in ways that, you know, it forever alters how they'll go forward. And so it's a very emotional story, I think. It's a very sad story, but it's also a very redeeming story, because there's a lot of, you know, like I said, there's a lot of, as one person put it, it showed the best of, the worst of humanities in some way, but it also showed the best in humanity some way. So.
Phil, did your reporters see that people were willing to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, we reached out to quite a few people, and of course you want to be respectful, and of course some people, you know, it's obviously a hugely traumatic event in their lives. Some people are not, you know, maybe ready to share what they went through. But you know, a lot of people found it, I think, helpful for themselves to talk about it, and so those are the people that we really spent a lot of time with. And we were able to get a nice cross section, I think, of the people that were involved that day, from the injured to the some of the people who rescued them, to some of the people who were in the hospitals that treated them. And so, you know, I say this, the thing that's always bothersome about these kinds of stories is that you wish you could get everybody's perspective. You wish you could tell in the most complete fashion you can. and that's not always possible. But I think what we have is a really, I think, it's reflective of the day, and I think it captures a lot of what happened there that day. I think our readers will really enjoy the story.
It's a story that's coming out in the Oklahoman this weekend. Also this weekend, the big debut of Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Record numbers Thursday night, $57 million. That tops, as I learned, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows 2. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
You did see it?
I saw Harry Potter. I haven't seen Star Wars.
All right. That one made $43.5 million back in July of 2011. It also holds the overall opening day record of $91 million, which is what Star Wars is gunning for today on its official release date. It's got a 95% positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It's getting pretty good buzz, and your man Adam Kemp went through a marathon.
Yeah, we subjected him to far more than we should have probably. It was 17 hours of nonstop Star Wars movie action.
Question is, was that enough for him?
Yeah.
Actually, have we seen him since?
I have not actually seen him today. I should text him and make sure he's okay. But so he spent 17 hours at the Quail Springs AMC Theater with a couple hundred other Star Wars diehards.
And there are plenty of those.
Sitting through every one of the 6 previous films.
Right.
6 previous films with the occasional break for coffee or a donut or midnight pizza, I believe was one of the things.
And there's some footage of some of the fans that he encountered there at the theater.
Right, and he let me know
People
early
look
on.
comfortable?
He let me know early on that he'd made a terrible mistake by not bringing a neck pillow. So apparently there are some real veterans at these things who go to these marathons and come quite equipped.
Seems
for
like the
adventure.
most important thing you'd have there is a charger for your phone.
Well, he mentioned in his story that the plugs inside the theater were very popular seat locations. If you could sit near
That's
a
a great
plug.
idea.
And as any good reporter would, he got there early to stake out, a good spot to report from. So
And there's Ed Brown.
yeah, so he, again, he did talk a little bit about, the stomach was acting up a little bit early this morning after a night of
After lots of popcorn?
yeah, popcorn, pizza, donuts. But I think he'll be okay.
Well, Don, from a business side, I think Hollywood always is kind of ups and down. They had a pretty decent summer this year, but this was one that they were banking on, and it looks like it's going to come through.
Oh yeah, well, and it's gotten great reviews. You mentioned that on Rotten Tomatoes. I know in my household, 2 members of the McCoy family have seen it, and it got 100% for
Oh, really?
both of them. Oh yeah, big thumbs up. The best Star Wars yet.
I've heard that from some of the reviews that it ranks right up there. Now, are you guys going to see it this weekend, or are you going to wait for the commotion to die down just a little bit?
I'll see it at some point, probably not this weekend.
Same here, right?
Yeah.
I think I still have to see 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? So I don't want to go out of order.
You're that guy.
Yeah, I'm that guy. So I'm a little behind.
You're that guy, the only American
They're on
who
Netflix
hasn't
though,
seen
right?
those.
They're on
Sure it
Netflix
is.
though, right?
Okay, one last thing before we move on here. Speaking of Adam Kemp, he's a man who has a fantastic beard. And when you have a fantastic beard and a rage such as the glitter beard comes along, you must partake or be subjected to, one or the other. So we glittered Adam's beard and sent him out among the people, which is the beautiful thing about now working downtown, is that you can send him out among the people. What's the story behind this, Phil?
Well, I want to apologize to Adam first for making him do it. But he did it with, what enthusiasm the kid shows, so.
Sprinkling it on like salt on a popcorn.
Exactly. He was a little reluctant when we first brought it up, but, and then he got sort of into it.
Quickly got over that.
Yeah, all I can say is that stuff is all over the newsroom now.
Well, it's silly, but it's the holiday season, and frankly, it's kind of fun. So it's good to do some fun things and go out and talk to some people.
And the people that he encountered loved it. People that I didn't even think would like it liked it. So I don't think he got one negative comment about it, actually. So
people were taking his picture out by the skating rink over at the Myriad Gardens, and
well, I did notice that as soon as he got back to the newsroom, he took it out. So that should tell you something.
Well, because he had to get ready to go to the marathon.
Well,
he had a big night. It was a big day for him.
Good for Adam Kemp. All right, guys, let's get out of here with this. Don, what do you guys have coming up this weekend?
Steve Blackmeyer is going to take a look at the Oklahoma River, which is going to be the center of a lot of activity next year. Olympic rowing, the whitewater.
The rapids, right?
Yeah, it's going to open up, and before you know it, there's going to be a tremendous amount of really fascinating stuff going on down there that I think is going to draw a lot of people.
Yeah, they were hoping it would be a big draw of people, commerce, business, parties, restaurants,
It's
clubs.
the road to Rio. So
The road to Rio, that's right. Absolutely. Phil, what's coming up off your desk? We talked about the intersection.
Yep. Well, we'll have a transcript of an interview we did with Paco Balderrama with the Oklahoma City Police Department about the number of homicides we've had in the city this year, which are up over last year and up over 10-year average or quite a bit. And then we'll also be, I think Monday, I believe, is the first day of winter. I hate to say, would that be right?
Yep.
So Monday's the first day of winter. So
Probably
Silas,
be greeted with some 50-degree weather, right?
so Silas Allen will once again be informing us about our weird weather here in Oklahoma and what kind of a season it's been and what kind of a winter we might expect.
Very nice. Phil, Don, thanks for your time and good stuff on the Oklahoma economy. That's good context right there. Appreciate that. The stories that were mentioned can be found in upcoming editions of the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com. Have a great weekend, everyone.